Hello and welcome to the Armchair QBs. I'm your host Calum Buchan, and alongside me, as always, is Dan Cameron. So this week we are going to be starting our previews for the forthcoming season. We're going to be looking at the AFC North and the NFC North, giving our thoughts on the divisions, some potential bets that we like, and also putting our necks on the line and giving some predictions as well, which always goes well with us, doesn't it, Dan?
Yeah. Choose the opposite of whatever we say. Choose the opposite of whatever you say.
Yeah. So I think it's probably going to be quite a long show for us compared with normal. So let's just get started on this. I think first thing, let's have a look at the Super Bowl odds for all 8 teams that we're going to be discussing. Favourites are obviously the Ravens. They're currently listed at 6-1 according to Bet365, and that's second favourite actually behind Kansas City. Dan, as a Ravens fan, you must be delighted with that.
Very, very nervous because obviously the last 2 playoff appearances haven't gone very well, and it's already becoming a narrative that, the Ravens are great in the regular season, but the minute they get into a playoff game, they choke. And it's very difficult to get away from that after essentially the Chargers managed to spam them with as many safeties or DBs as they could get on the field, and then just fell apart against the Titans last year. So where analytics maybe got a bit the better of them. So it's nervous, but there's a whole lot to like about what the Ravens have done and where they are roster-wise.
Yeah, I think their roster's improved, and we'll get into that later on in the show. The long shots from the 8 teams that we're discussing, well, Bengals are 125-1.
And even that's too short.
Yeah, they're not actually the worst team when I was looking at it, because I thought, the Bengals must be the ones that, are the outright, dead last favourites, but it's actually the Jaguars at 150-1.
I think that's some disrespect going towards Mr. Minshew there.
Yeah, but I think that line's moved since it came out that he had tested for COVID.
He's not tested for COVID.
He came in contact with someone, and then that probably pushed that line out. But don't you worry, it's going to come back to.
Did you hear his quote? Did you hear his quote about that?
Yeah.
COVID took one look at him and ran the other way.
Which is, I absolutely love Minshew.
Yeah, he's got some swag about him.
Oh, he's so great. We've then got the Lions at 60-1, which I think is fair. Matt Patricia's garbage. Bears 35-1. I thought that was quite short odds. I don't know if they're factoring in Nick Foles winning that job, and that's reduced their odds. But with Trubisky, I'd put them in the hundreds range.
Well, fair enough. We'll get into the Bears when we talk about their win total.
Yeah, we then have the Browns at 30-1, the Steelers 25-1, Green Bay are 25-1, and the Vikings are 22-1. Bit surprised that at the Vikings 22-1. They're probably the best team in that division, but I don't think they're Super Bowl worthy, really.
Well, you could conversely say that the Packers being 25-1 is great value, given that they had their ass handed to them. They were in the NFC Championship last year.
Yeah, I mean 25-1 is worth a punt. It's worth putting £5 on them.
Maybe if you're on the exchanges and able to take advantage of it, or something like that. But betting on the Super Bowl preseason, unless you've kind of got a real key as to something that's going to go wrong, or you really are Nostradamus, I mean, it's not worth a tenner. It's you need to put something a little bit more substantial on, don't you think?
Yeah, it depends though as well. If you're just going to put on kind of a bet just to support your team, it's worth putting like a $5 on or something. If you're a Bengals fan, 125-1, you never know what's going to happen, especially with COVID.
But you're never going to get Leicester City odds, are you?
Oh no, you'll never get that, but it's
Uh,
still worth it. I quite like to do the bets just for to reach the AFC Championship, reach the NFC Championship, and then that's at least you'll get a bit more value from that.
I think we have to. I think we haven't done it beforehand, but before we talk about anything like that, please gamble responsibly if you do choose to do so.
Yeah,
Certainly don't want to be advocating putting hundreds of pounds on the Packers to win it 25-1.
Not hundreds of pounds, bet thousands.
No, stop it.
Let's move on then. Let's break down the AFC North first. So last year we had, let me just pull up the standings. AFC North Ravens obviously ended up finishing 14-2. You had Steelers in second place at 8-8. Their season kind of fell apart when Ben Roethlisberger got hurt, and they were relying on Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges. The Browns, a disappointing year, finishing 6-10, and then the Bengals, bottom of the barrel, finishing 2-14. We've seen some key additions. Certainly, Baltimore, they've gotten better, I think.
Yeah. Well, we're going to kind of go team by team. So if we start with Baltimore. They certainly don't have much to do in relation to adding to the roster, but they did manage to get some incredibly good pieces to the defense, which some might say is the more kind of questionable side of the ball for Baltimore. Getting Calais Campbell for Tuppence. And also getting Derek Wolfe in as well, which was good. And they obviously had Michael Brockers, which had a deal fall through. So they're obviously very, very keen to address that defensive line and get a little bit more solid there. On the flip side, obviously, they've lost Marshall Yanda, Hall of Fame guard, and they're trying to fix that with some lower round draft picks, which is small feat, but Baltimore does have a good track record of being able to get solid play out of these low round picks. So for being a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense, it's no surprise that they're kind of only second in the betting for the Super Bowl. And if you could put the Ravens and the Chiefs in the AFC Championship just now, I would take it, but I would be extremely nervous about it.
Well, I really like the addition of Dobbins. I thought that was a great steal, because if you look at his stats from Ohio State, he's pretty much got the same stats as Ezekiel Elliott, but he's fallen to the second round, and the Ravens have been able to grab him, which I thought that was good value. It gives you another dynamic running back behind Ingram to utilise. So
the analytics hated it because it's running back. And they couldn't understand why the Ravens went that way. But obviously, the run game is a strength. They had a high grade on him. They wanted to bring him in. That's fine. But Denzel Mims was still available. And to me, that kind of 50-ish pick, that was good value to get another wide receiver in where you'd be able to kind of be more dynamic in the pass game, and he was a different type of body, probably a little bit too similar to Miles Boykin, a bit too similar to Miles Boykin, who's been a little bit disappointing. So I was a bit upset that they didn't kind of take Denzel Mims, but on the flip side, J.K. Dobbins was an absolute stud at Ohio State. And so it's really now, where does he fit in the rotation? Obviously, Mark Ingram's a little bit older, around about 30 plus now, and Gus Edwards is still Gus the Bus, but it's about me trying to see how they all fit into a rotation. And the fourth running back, Justice Hill, I liked him when he was at Oklahoma State, and he's a different type to those other 3 backs that we've already mentioned. So how they're all going to play out and get time and get touches on the ball is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to have a hard cut. I don't know if Justice Hill will land unless he's able to contribute on special teams. I do think the wide receivers is a bit of a worry. I would have liked to see them get someone else in, because as it stands, Hollywood Brown, he's already got some injury concerns, and Willie Snead as your top outside guy, I'm not too confident on that. I don't know where, and especially if they're saying that they're going to rely a little bit more on Lamar's throwing this year.
Yeah, well, they did address wide receiver in the draft in Duvernay and James Prochet. So it's, whether Prochet actually makes it, I'm not quite sure. He's a low-round pick. He seems useful enough, but again, there's a lot of bodies in front of him, and Duvernay will definitely make the team. And it's a case of how him in the slot really kind of changes up how Miles Boykin's dealt with on the outside, and Willie Snead perhaps on the other side of Duvernay is dealt with as well. But I think Justice Hill will make the team. He's a third down back. He's the type of player that they need for certain situations, and they've still got a lot of value in him, having only taken him in last year. So overall, the squad is one of the best squads in the league. Not a lot of turnover other than maybe the defensive line and offensive line, which is, not necessarily what you want, but it's not so much that it's going to cause them such a great problem. And I think that they're clear favourites for the division.
Okay, so let's move on to the Steelers. I really like this Steelers defense.
Sorry, just before we come off the Ravens, and a quick maybe kind of prop bet is that Lamar Jackson had 1,200 yards this year. If you can get under that number or even under 1,100 yards, I would consider taking that if you're into your prop bets.
Yeah, that's actually quite a good shout for them. So Pittsburgh, again, let's move on to Pittsburgh Steelers. Last year, 8-8, load of injuries. I really, really like this Pittsburgh defense. I think they'll get into the playoffs again, or they will get into the playoffs this year, assuming Big Ben can stay healthy. They've not really done there's nothing that really stands out with their additions. Like Eric Ebron coming in is maybe one, but that's it really. I've got music playing in the background there. But yeah, they've added Eric Ebron. They obviously brought in their draft picks, but I just think as long as these guys stay healthy, they'll still be able to produce. I don't know, what's your thoughts, Dan?
Well, to get to 8-8 after Roethlisberger went down was a pretty good coaching job by Mike Tomlin, as far as I'm concerned, and he got a lot of credit for it, but maybe not as much as we were expecting. I think you're right. It's all about whether or not Big Ben stays healthy and they have him for the duration of the season. And in relation to Eric Ebron, he had a significant rise in his touchdowns last year. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not they're able to replicate that as well in Pittsburgh. The obvious name to me that's interesting for them and on the offensive side of the ball is more Deontay Johnson. He was targeted heavily down the back stretch last year by whichever quarterback was in, and I think he has the ability to really kind of become a leading number two, not just for the division but in the league. He picked up around about, I think it was 59 receptions last year. And I think that he could get close to maybe kind of 85, 90 receptions and maybe even 10 touchdowns. So for me, that's a kind of, little prop Deontay Johnson around about 10 touchdowns and see whether or not that Juju Smith-Schuster can come back to the fore a little bit. But I still think that they will challenge for the Ravens for it, but I still think the Ravens will take him.
I think the Ravens will take it. I think they're only going to get in as a wild card. But I do like, my prop bet for the Steelers would be TJ Watt to win Defensive Player of the Year, 14-1.
He was in the discussion along with Stephon Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore towards the end of last season, and he really just needs to kind of up his sack total a little bit, because that's all that is really involved when you're talking about Defensive Player of the Year. Does he have enough sacks to get that recognition?
Yeah, I think what's been promising with him is you've seen the progression every year. So I think this year I'd expect something big from him. So 14-1, good odds, and kind of worth a shot on him. Will we move on to the Browns now?
If we have to.
Oh, Cleveland. Last year, a disappointing 6-10. They've brought in Stefanski now as Baker's fourth coach. If you're, because you've got Hugh, Greg, then Freddie Kitchens, and now Stefanski. This is make or break for Baker Mayfield, I think. If he doesn't perform, why would you extend him? This is going to be a weird fit. That Stefanski offense that we saw in Minnesota doesn't really mesh with Baker's skills, I don't believe. They've got all the talent in the world. I think they're absolutely stacked at running back. You've got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, wide receivers, OBJ, Landry. They've managed to talk Njoku back round to signing or staying. So all the skill positions are there. I don't see this going well for them. I think last year they were 6-10. I think 5-11, 4-12.
Oh, we've talked a lot about not just Baker, but thereafter Stefanski's impact and how it's going to be there. It really comes down to two things for the Cleveland offense. Can they get that outside zone running with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt? And how they share the loads is going to be interesting to see. And how does Baker take off in this boot offense? We've had about 3 or 4 episodes where we've touched on this every so often. They've started talking about Alex Van Pelt, who was Rodgers' quarterback coach, who when was let go, Rodgers threw a hissy fit. He has been extremely influential in helping Rodgers and is taking a lot of things, supposedly mentoring Baker Mayfield in certain, small things, including his footwork and the staggered approach that they have from when he's under center. They're wanting to try and get rid of that so that he can have a better execution from under center, which is important in this boot offense. So that's going to be interesting to see. But to me, the key additions on defense are actually kind of more important. They've obviously signed up Myles Garrett. They've taken in Adrian Claiborne, who's not a megastar, but can have, very, very good days and is, I think, a better option than what they had going there. And then they've addressed the safety positions with Carl Joseph and Andrew Sendejo, two solid players who, again, will contribute a lot better than what was previously there. 6-10 is what they finished last year. They are projected 8 wins. I don't think they get to 8 wins. And I think that despite the defense improving, I think the offense will struggle in the first year for Stefanski. And so I think that it's probably another 6-win season if they're lucky.
I just think it's going to be quite a hard one. They have got a relatively easy schedule. They play the Giants, the Jets, out of conference. They've got the Raiders, and then obviously play Bengals twice, and the Washington football team this year. So, they should be able to win those, I guess.
You've literally just named six games.
Yeah, but there's always the chance that the Bengals will actually play up with Burrow. So you could see them losing one of those two.
Yeah, I think we get into a kind of wider discussion about how the way that COVID is going to affect preparations for this year, whether teams that have retained as much consistency as possible from last year are actually going to do better, or whether or not just the complete variable of COVID and the preparation means that any games are, there for the taking. So I think, you've identified 6 games that they could possibly get. I think even away, away at Cincy would be a difficult game for them. And the Raiders are going to be a dark horse, I think, in that division. That's probably tipping my hat to what I think they're going to do in a future podcast, but I wouldn't say that's a win for them. But the Browns are just the Browns, and until they do anything else to, make us think otherwise, we have to treat them as the Browns. And so that's why, less than 8 wins, certainly.
Yeah. And yeah, if you're going to be betting on the win totals for the year, Cleveland at 8 wins, I think you have to bet under.
Or take the push.
Let's move on to the bottom feeders last year. Cincinnati Bengals, 2-14. They've the big headline, obviously, they added Joe Burrow. How he does with such a shortened off season, I'll be interested to see. He seems a very intelligent guy, pretty switched on, coach's son, all that good stuff. But they only won 2 games last year, and they're they're expected to win 5 games this year. That's a big jump when you look at their schedule. I can't see where those wins are going to come, other than maybe picking up one against. You've maybe split with Cleveland. You've got to play Jacksonville, Washington again. Maybe I would go under on that one.
Okay, well, the thing about that 3-game jump is that last year there were 7 games where there were 7 points, where they lost by 7 points or less. So can they turn it around so that they're not losing those close games? Or 7 points is relatively a big spread, but bring it down to those closer margins, and especially win at home. They got AJ Green back, that will help. Second round pick T Higgins, Joe Burrow. There's all sorts of reasons to be optimistic about the skill positions in Cincinnati, but the offensive line is still a dumpster fire as far as I'm concerned. And good lines are essential for you to win the NFL. So I don't know if 5 is achievable, but I would say certainly more than 2. I'm giving myself a massive range there. I'm sure that I'll be absolutely vilified for it, but between 2 and 5 wins, I think is doable for Cincy.
And I think a success for Cincinnati would be if they can double from last year and win 4 games. I think they'd be happy, because they still have a lot of holes on that roster. Like you say, the O-line isn't great. It's a shortened off-season. I do like T. Higgins. I thought that was a good pickup. AJ Green, he's had some health issues, so it's just, will he be able to see it out? I'm just not. I think 4 wins is fine, but people projecting 5 wins, I did see in one place 6 wins for them. That's too high, given their talent level, and I'm not a fan of it.
I think the over/under is around about 5.5 at the moment. So if it's 5.5, you're definitely taking the under.
Yeah. Another prop bet that I like for Cincy is Joe Burrow under 22.5 touchdowns. I kind of sound like I'm going back on myself here. I like the skill positions, but as you say, that line isn't very good. So how much protection will he actually have, and how many chances will he get to throw from a clean pocket? That's what I'm interested to see. So I would bet the under on that.
That averages out as he's just getting over 1 a game. So I think there will be games where he doesn't get any. There might be one where he gets 3. It's probably they're around about the right line. It's very difficult to tell. But the one good thing that we saw from Joe Burrow in the Alabama game, and also for other games that we watched him in last year, was his ability to escape, keep his eyes downfield, and get the ball down. So I'm not going to touch that. If anybody offered me, I say I wouldn't take it. So I'm going to leave that one, and you're welcome to under 22 all that you want.
Well, it's just that he's got 5 games against very good defenses. So he's got to play the Ravens twice, the Steelers twice, and then you've also got to take on the Titans as well this year, I believe. Or am I looking at Cleveland? I've still got Cleveland. No, he does take on the Titans as well. So he's got the Titans in week 8. So that's 2 pretty sound. That's 5 games against pretty good defenses, which for a rookie is quite hard.
Yeah, a rookie in difficult preparation. So you can have it all you want, but I'm not touching it.
Yeah, no, it's just one that I quite liked. I saw it and was like, it's worth a punt, like a couple of pounds on that, and then you're fine. So is there anything else that you want to touch on in this? I guess we should probably make some predictions for how we think the division will be finalised.
I think almost pretty much the order that we went with them in. I think Ravens will win it, but it will be difficult. I mean, whether they get to 14 wins again this season, I don't know. Pittsburgh again, as long as Big Ben stays healthy, will come in either second or still be challenging the Ravens for that top spot. And then really after that, they're kind of also runs of Cleveland and Cincy, and I think Cincy will still be in a difficult position to get off a bottom spot.
I will put my neck out on the line and say Cincinnati finish above Cleveland. Because somebody has to be bold here.
Right. What do you mean bold? This whole conversations we have are supposed to be reasoned and based on evidence.
I want to bring the hot takes. You know what it is? I think I've got a feeling that this Cleveland situation could just completely blow up.
That's fair. That's fair.
This is just a gut feel hot take type of situation, but I think there's more. Now I know that we love analytics and we hate or we like to lean on analytics and evidence as well, but I do think there's positive momentum and negative momentum which can affect football teams. I think Joe Burrow coming in, that gives Cincinnati a whole lot of positivity, and it's kind of like a feel-good off-season of like, oh, we're on the rise again. Cleveland have just been picked apart and told, like, you've not been achieving. Why aren't you achieving? Here's another coach. We're chucking more pressure on you. Baker, like, the chat's already starting of, like, Baker needs to deliver this year. And I just...
We started that, didn't we? We started that.
Yeah, we did start that. We're influential. So I just have a feeling that things are going to go wrong. If we go through Cleveland's whole schedule, right? First game, Baltimore away. That's a loss.
Oh, I don't know. Well, again, there's no preseason, so one thing that we could discuss maybe today or tomorrow or the future, whatever, is that with no preseason, how those first 4 games are actually going to materialize. Those first 4 or 5 games of the season, how they're going to materialize, and will there be more upsets than you would expect over that initial period?
But wait, if you've got that right, so if you're coming into that from that point of view with no preseason, I would say it's harder to stop Baltimore's defense when you're cold and you've had no games to warm up.
If we also follow on from what I'm saying about perhaps there being in favour of more consistency, and that position still being there for the Ravens, having no turnover really on the offensive side of the ball other than maybe guard and maybe adding some key pieces on the defence, which again will help them. But again, it's not a massive turnover. They've kept the majority of their roster together, so. I don't know. I don't want to talk about first games. I was talking about kind of the season as a whole just now, but I'm not going to go over the first, kind of game by game as we go through Cleveland's schedule. But certainly, it needs to start well for them. Shall we say that the season needs to start well for them to have any chance of making a go of it this year. Yeah.
Okay. So they need to start well, but I would say that I would mark that down. I'd be more inclined to lean towards Baltimore. Their second game is a Thursday night football game. So they're coming off a short week against Baltimore. They then play Cincinnati at home. Okay. So I think that'll be closer than what's expected. I think probably Cleveland win this one. They then go on to play Washington, which Washington they should beat. So just now they're at 2-1. They then have to play Dallas, the Colts, and the Steelers. I think they maybe win one out of those three. Okay, so you're now 3-3. Finish off with Cincy. I think away to Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati win that one. They then play the Raiders. I think the Raiders are going to be sneaky good this year. They'll win that one. Now you're in free fall because you've probably going to be losing to the Steelers, Bengals, and Raiders in a row. So you've lost 3 in a row. Going into your bye week, you then have the Texans, the Eagles, Jacksonville, and Tennessee in a 4-week stretch. I think you only beat Jacksonville. And even then, Jacksonville, it might be close. Because I don't know how that team are going to fare with Minshew. I quite like Minshew. So I hope they're not terrible.
Okay, yeah. Bottom line is that we're saying that out of the first kind of quarter of the season, they might be 500 at best, and thereafter, by the first half of the season, they're definitely going to be under 500. I mean, it's difficult to kind of go through each game because we don't know how many people are going to test positive for COVID, what other injuries there's going to be, and all the other different effects of it. But overall, I would say that the Browns they've got more problems within their building than they do outside their building, if you understand what I mean. They've got to sort out themselves. They've got to sort out themselves first without worrying what everyone else is doing first.
Yeah, that's fair, I would say. And it's just, I can't see them. I can just see this going wrong. Baker's got that prickly mentality. Like if things start going wrong, he starts barking at Landry and OBJ. OBJ and Landry aren't going to be quiet. They'll fire back. If this goes wrong, it goes spectacularly wrong.
It'll be good television.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move over to the NFC North. Last year, the Packers won the division, going 13-3. A very underwhelming 13-3, I think it's fair to say. The Vikings were in the wild card at 10-6. And the Bears, despite all the outside noise, were 8-8, and the Lions were 3-12-1. Let's again work from the top. Green Bay this year, very strange draft. They didn't do anything to really help Aaron Rodgers. They took Jordan Love in the first round, which was a bit of a head scratcher. How do you see this going for them?
Well, obviously, they're moving towards that kind of San Francisco style of run game. However, I don't think that LaFleur is that innovative a play caller or play designer to really take advantage of that style of play the way that Kyle Shanahan does. So they've obviously drafted to get bigger, heavier, and be more run-focused, even though they've got one of the best quarterbacks. I was going to say best quarterbacks around in Aaron Rodgers, despite what others might say. We kind of said that, well, the way that Cincinnati turns things around is, clearing up those close games. Well, if you think about the Packers, they won a lot of these close games. They were on the side of that coin. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they can hold up with this new kind of, restricted philosophy and get that production and get to 13 wins. I think that the Packers will regress, and I think it will be, again, good television, lots of column inches available about it, because the more they regress, the more the friction between Rodgers and LaFleur is going to come out, and all the secret sources and all the leaks to the press are going to happen, which seems to happen in Green Bay more than perhaps New York, which is a bit surprising. But and so I think that they are actually going to regress by a good kind of 3-4 games. I wonder whether they will actually get to 10 wins this season.
Well, they've got the 8th hardest strength of schedule this year. They're paired up with they're playing San Francisco. They have to play the Saints because they're paired up against the NFC South this year for their rotation, and they also play the AFC South as well. So there's some tough games coming for them, as well as their division ones.
Yeah, I should have prepared that more, right? Because I said I would struggle to see them getting 10 wins. It seems as though Vegas agrees with me because the current win total's at 9.
Yeah, which I think that's fair. It's just, I think with the fact that they didn't get better as well during the off season, or that the experts would say that they haven't really gotten better with their free agency and their draft additions.
Well, they've also lost, their one free agency addition in Devin Funchess. He's decided to opt out, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's opting out. He's gone on the COVID list.
So he's left with a cast of characters he wasn't particularly enamoured with last season.
Yeah, and it's not like you can go out and get a game changer at wide receiver. The only one that's really available is Antonio Brown, and he would have to sit for 8 games if you wanted to take him on. And he comes with a whole host of problems off the field as well. So the skill positions are going to be an issue. And then, do you start to get chatter of putting in Jordan Love if this isn't going well?
Sorry, you kind of dropped out a little bit there.
So do you start to get chatter of putting in Jordan Love if this doesn't go well?
Well, we think that the kind of Raiders, and after this year's probably the most likely. So, and Rodgers recently gave an interview where he accepted that his career ends away from Green Bay. I don't think it's going to be the 4 years that Brett Favre had for Rodgers. So I think if they are struggling, I don't think Jordan Love goes in. I think Rodgers still finishes the season, but that will almost confirm absolutely that he definitely leaves after this year.
Okay.
One thing I say about Aaron Rodgers is, he's thrown for 4,000 yards last year, and since 2008, there's been, depending on whether you talk about injury seasons or not, whenever he's played 16 games, he's passed for over 4,000 yards. I'm trying to think of a way to put this, but I think he will play the full 16, and I think he will pass for under 4,000 yards.
Yeah, I would like that one as well. I don't think in that offense that it's really going to help him get to 4,000 yards.
No, there was a reduction in his pass attempts last year, and I think that it's going to happen even more given the way that they've set their stall out. So I think that's if you can get under 4,000 yards, I think that's a good number.
Okay, let's move on to Minnesota. They've lost Stephon Diggs. I think that was like the most notable part of them. But they are still, considered the favourites to win the division. Their schedule kind of similar to Green Bay's, obviously. I think they will probably do better than Green Bay, but you're always limited by the fact that you've got Kirk Cousins as your quarterback.
Yeah, and we've kind of used him as a derogatory comparison to Dak Prescott. But he does. His inconsistency is probably what's more maddening than anything else. Because he will go absolutely quiet for 2 games and then have 300-yard, 3 TD games. So it's one of these things of how consistent is he going to be? Is Dalvin Cook going to come back and be the player that we expect him to be? And can they get some production out of Justin Jefferson, despite the fact that he's going to be in the kind of COVID exempt list until he comes out of that? So I don't think Minnesota have ever won 9 games after a season where they've won 9 or more games. And that's happened in recent history as well. So it's not as though it's kind of, it's not as though Zimmer is totally exempt from that. So Minnesota Vikings, 9 wins is what Vegas are saying about that. I think, they don't know either. They're having Green Bay on 9 wins and they're having Minnesota on 9 wins. I think it's a bit of a kind of, crapshoot in relation to that. But I think that maybe just the over for Minnesota.
Yeah, I think this could be like, remember some of the classic NFC East conference championships where you had the winner maybe finishing 9-7. We actually had it last year. The Eagles finished 9-7 to win the division. I think that could happen here, just because their schedule is so strong.
And the other 2 teams are just so bad. But I like the way you put that. I think that's probably right. I think it's probably is a division where the winner could be 9-7 easily.
Yeah, and it's so I don't think, and if you're going in 9-7, you're probably going to be the bottom seed. So you'll be playing one of the wild card teams, and I can't see you really doing much in the playoffs, realistically. And for me, I think it's the Vikings that come out in this 9-7. I just don't think Green Bay. It's almost like they're in a rebuild project, but they don't want to say they're in a rebuild project.
And they're kind of, they're trying to do a rebuild project, but do it over a period of 2 years and not admit it. But again, it's one of these things. If anybody says, the Green Bay Packers deserve to be 13-3 last year, I think they're kidding themselves on a little bit. Now, I've got a soft spot for Green Bay. I quite like, the whole aura around the team and the history of it. But again, trying to be, not fanciful about it. I think that they are going to regress this year. I think the Vikings will probably just stay the same, but not be excellent, and eke out maybe 9 wins, possibly 10, and thereafter the rest of the division's a dumpster fire. So,
yeah, so last year there's an advanced stat which is called Pythagorean wins. Right?
Pythagorean or Pythagorean?
My dyslexia is kicking in, so we'll go with your pronunciation. But Green Bay were expected to have 9.8 wins. Now, generally, when you outperform those wins, there's a regression the next year. And so they outperformed by 4 wins. So that tells me that there was like an element of luck involved in those wins. So I can see them coming back down to earth. Again, it also makes sense because the schedule is going to be much harder for them this year.
Well, again, we'll talk about kind of, those close games that they won. They only beat the Washington by 5 points. They only beat the Lions, albeit the last week of the season, by 3 points. And that was, Matthew Staffordless team. The Vikings less than a touchdown, the Bears just a touchdown. So, those are 4 wins there, which are the 4 wins that perhaps, go the other way, given what you're saying about that stat. I'm still on the fence about analytics completely, but if you say there's going to be a regression and you think there's about a 4-win variance there, then maybe those are 4 wins that we could point to from last year.
Yeah, anytime when you kind of see, the key to look at if you're looking for regression is how many one-score wins your team has had.
We're talking about touchdowns, so yeah, we're not talking about field
goals.
Yeah,
touchdowns. So you can basically 7 points and under. If that's the wins that you want to look at, because there will be a regression from those. It just shows that you're playing close games, but you either win a turnover battle to win that, which turnovers fluctuate heavily from year to year, or like there's some other reason behind that win. But that's what you should always kind of look at if you're going by these advanced stats. Again, it's not a perfect science, but it's
indicative of something.
Yeah, is how I would say. I mean, I wouldn't rely heavily on it, but there's enough evidence of it that I kind of put some weight into it, not a bet my mortgage kind of weight though. So let's move on to the Bears. Another dumpster fire.
It's my fault. We've got to stop going deeper into things because it's just creepy, and we've got to stop calling things dumpster fires. All right.
But I like the term dumpster fire.
No, look, I saw you write that Mills concept article, and you said you were going deeper into that, and I wanted to reach through the computer and hit you.
Well, wait, I need a writing crux.
Delve. How about we delve? You can use delve for the next 2 articles.
Okay, I will use delve. Last year, the Bears ended up finishing 8-8, which was surprising.
Bloody miracle.
Yeah. So this year, obviously, they brought in Nick Foles to push Trubisky. They're clearly not going to stay with Trubisky. They were not giving him the extension. They're letting him play out this the 5th year option. I think the fact that you've got you now have Nick Foles breathing down his neck. They don't trust him. They've invested so much in that Khalil Mack trade. It's all kind of gone wrong. I think everybody's kind of feeling the pressure now, and I'm not sure how this year's going to go.
When we had the Baker Mayfield conversation, we talked about Trubisky and his kind of going from the 2nd year being positive to the 3rd year, which was awful, and how Matt Nagy was obviously frustrated that he wasn't able to get the same sort of production out of Trubisky from the previous year that he was in Trubisky's 3rd year. So I think you're right. Trubisky will be gone after this year, but will Nick Foles automatically stay as the quarterback? I can't say whether or not that's what's going to happen. So we've already talked about Jordan Love coming in for Aaron Rodgers if it goes wrong. How many starts or how many losses within the first 6 games, perhaps is a better way to put it, does Trubisky get? How long a leash does he get before Nick Foles is in?
You think Trubisky starts week 1?
I think Trubisky will start week 1.
Okay, so
because Trubisky, you got to remember that I like looking at these things from a kind of PR angle, which sometimes gets the better of me. But the Bears have to say they gave Trubisky every opportunity, and then he has to hang himself so that those who made the pick of Trubisky can get another shot at it. Somehow Ryan Pace has, still got the year of the Bears brass there. So they start Trubisky. He either comes through and plays really well, at which point it's, pats on the back and everyone all around, we knew he would come good and what great coaches we are and what great personnel men we are. Or we start him, he absolutely flames out, and then you've got Nick Foles that comes in, does a better job, and then they're able to say, especially Ryan Pace, well, I was able to protect the franchise and be able to get somebody in for a 4th round draft pick and redo his contract. So that, when you look at it that way, to me, Trubisky starts, but he will have an extremely short leash. So how many How many games going on that hypothetical situation do you think he gets in the first 6?
So from the first 6, this is where if we're going off that, Trubisky might be able to keep his job. Because if you look at their opponents for the first 6 weeks, based on defensive efficiency, he only plays one team in the top 10, Tampa Bay. He starts with the Lions, then he's got the Lions are ranked 28th, Giants are 27th, and the Falcons are 20th. So conceivably he should have 3 good showings there. And then you've got the Colts, who were 17th, and the Panthers week 6, who are 25th. Now, that's why, looking at that schedule, I was questioning if you go with Trubisky, because for me, that's a chance for the Bears to have a really good start if you go with Nick Foles.
So you're not saying in the Trubisky situation how many games he gets. You're saying that they shouldn't start Trubisky at all, and they should start Nick Foles because he has the better opportunity of them winning the majority of those 6 games, given that all the teams are in the bottom half, or sorry, all but one of the teams are in the bottom half of the defensive efficiency.
Yeah, and then after week 6, you play the Rams, the Saints, the Titans, and the Vikings before you get your bye in week 11. So those last 4 games, you could lose all 4.
Well, certainly the Saints, Titans, and Vikings is going to be a tough ask for them. I think the Saints is at the Superdome.
Yeah.
Titans is at home, and then it's away at the Vikings. So yeah, no, I'm with you on that. But certainly up until week 11, that's a harsh run into the bye. And then, of course, people will say, well, the bye would be the perfect time to make the switch. I think
your season could be dead if you've got Trubisky, because if you've got those kind of half and half games, which I would say Atlanta, you've got to match that offense, which I don't think Trubisky is capable of doing, and the Colts.
Yeah, I think they can be 0-4. No, I think they could be. I think they could legit be 0-5 going into the Buccaneers game, and the Panthers. Depends how Teddy Bridgewater gets on. That's a bit of more of an unknown. But right, okay, you got a bold prediction. The Bears will be 0-5.
0-5, okay. With Trubisky as starter.
Bears will be 0-5 with Trubisky as starter.
I think they would beat the Lions week 1. I think they would beat the Lions and Giants. I think you could beat the Giants.
I think we're underestimating.
I think 2-3.
Yeah, I just think we're underestimating how terrible the Bears are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, so Las Vegas is projecting around 7 to 8 wins. I don't think you can start Trubisky. I just don't think you can do it.
No, and
you're already saying that you're moving on.
There's a valid. Well, they haven't said that they're already moving on. They've been really, really supportive of him. So
by not giving him that contract extension.
Well, yeah, but they've been really, really supportive of him, saying that he was going to be as part of the. Let's put it this way: they haven't thrown him out completely, okay? And he's cheap enough that they could easily have done that, okay? So they've just not given him the extension. All right, but they've kept him in, and they brought in Nick Foles. But I still think that the brass there are. I mean, you got to remember how much they gave up to go and get him at number 2, and they're absolutely desperate for him to have some sort of value over and above Mahomes and Watson, which he'll never get. But they have to have some sort of value. They're desperate for it. So I still think that there's just undercurrents of that they need Trubisky to be out there and hang himself to dry, and that's why Nick Foles won't start the season. Nick Foles won't start the season, is what I'm going to say.
I think maybe if there was a preseason, you could make the argument that he wouldn't start because they would just give him the chance to lose it in the preseason games. and it would maybe be a bit more cut and dry.
Yeah. One thing I am kind of underselling is the fact is that at some point there was actually a controversy as to whether or not Chase Daniel should be the starter over Trubisky. So if that's the actual conversation that was happening last year, maybe I shouldn't be so bullish about Trubisky. Trubisky making it through 5 games and being able to lose them all. So
I just think if you start off 0-3, you pull him.
Right. Okay. So after 10 minutes and my first question, we managed to get 3 games.
Yeah, no, but I don't think they would go. I think they would beat the Lions, but if you're saying that before they get to the Buccaneers, under your premise, you're saying that they're 0-4.
Mm-hmm.
I think once you get to 0-3 with Trubisky, you pull them.
Right. I just think the Colts beat them outright, regardless of whether Nick Foles is there or not. But I think you're probably right. I think if you got beat up by Daniel Jones in week 2 and week 1 is as bad as I think it's going to be for them, then it could even be that. But we'll give them 3. We'll give them 3 games max. So Trubisky to be replaced after 3 games.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. Let's go to our last team here. Detroit Lions were 3-12-1 last year. This year they're projected to win 8 games. Their Pythagorean wins last year was 5.9, so they actually underperformed. I have to be honest. So last night I was talking about Matthew Stafford, and I ended up watching. Do you remember the game from his rookie season where he dislocated his elbow and he still finished the drive?
No.
Oh, he finished it. So he finishes the drive. It's
when we learn that my memory is just absolutely shot.
So there's the clip's out on YouTube, and it's like 5 minutes unedited from when he's tackled, and it's like a late hit. It's dirty. It's roughing the passer. He dislocates his shoulder. The Browns, because it's the Browns, take a timeout, and Stafford's lying down on the sidelines, writhing in pain, like just screaming, telling the doctors to get the fuck off me. And then he hears that they've taken a timeout, and he's just like, get me up. They've taken a timeout. I can go in. Goes in, and throws the touchdown, wins the game. And I just remember watching that. I was like, fuck me, Matthew Stafford has been wasted on this team. I just felt so sorry for him.
Well, we should go back and kind of watch some Matthew Stafford games from way back when, because he is I think he kind of has all sorts of records for during his period in the league since he came in. He is number 1 in 3 of the main categories, and there's no doubt that he is a quarterback, has an arm, and maybe has a ridiculous loyalty to the team that drafted him. And it'd be interesting to see him in another setting, or certainly another scheme than what they've been doing over the last 2 years. But there was a lot of buzz about Detroit at the beginning of last season about the way that they came out and started. And they only lost by a point to the Packers in week 6, and thereafter they lost, they lost every game but one thereafter. And of course, Matthew Stafford was out for a long period of time. So they've got a COVID situation. They're, haven't been able to handle it as well as maybe some other teams. They've got Hawkinson and Kenny Golladay are both in that COVID situation as well. How that's going to disrupt their preparation, I'm not quite sure. But as much as, we don't have any faith in Trubisky, I mean, I'm pretty sure we're both on the same page and say that we don't have any faith in Matt Patricia. Is that right?
Oh, no, he's awful. This is the big thing which I love about Matt Patricia. He's a genius, a rocket scientist, and all that. He has a pencil behind his ear to write on a laminate sheet of paper.
Oh no! That's absolutely disgusting. I mean, he found a little thing and he kept it, and that just being an absolute idiot, he wouldn't let it go. And obviously, I think we have to kind of sometimes try and detach ourselves from the persona that's presented, and it does seem to be a bit of a persona for Matt Patricia, because he insists on keeping that stupid pencil behind his fucking hat. And the way that he's been essentially treats the players there and treats the press there as well, he's not come across well at all as a person and the persona he's put across. Him and Dan Quinn have, unfortunately, been trying to not instill their own culture. They've been trying to instill Belichick's culture. I don't think that's a fresh take, but it's not worked. They've been taking a lot of expatriate players in to try and help build that culture and have the way that Matt Patricia handles himself, accepted by the other staff, but they've just not been able to do it. And the amount of Patriots that they've taken in, even again this off season, has been quite astonishing. They brought in Jamie Collins, Danny Shelton, and Jerron Harmon again. So that's three players from New England that they brought over again, in addition to Trey Flowers and the like. So they're trying desperately to get all these pieces from New England in. And Trey Flowers has never had more than 7 sacks in a season. I found that quite an amazing stat when I had a look at it. So the defense, which is what Patricia's gig is not good. And I think they're going to struggle on offense with certain aspects of the kind of, are they a run team or are they a pass team? They've kind of, in no man's land. They don't really have a good identity just now, as far as I'm concerned. So I think they'll be better than the Bears, but not by much.
I think their schedule is actually harder than the Bears. It depends on Stafford's health. One thing that I would like as a prop bet is Stafford to win or throw for the most passing yards, because I think he's got that in him. And also, if they're going to be down, they're going to be chucking the ball. So it's
Are you talking about in the season or the division?
In the season.
Right. So you think that he's going to throw for the most yards out of all 32 quarterbacks? Or 32 plus quarterbacks, right, okay.
Yeah, last year Jameis won it. It's not necessarily the best quarterback that wins that award.
No. I'm not dismissing it at all. I'm actually kind of right on board. I think it's he's certainly got the arm for it, and when he had Calvin Johnson, that would be fine. His receiving core is good, not stellar, but what I would say is that he is been a little bit knocked up the last couple of years. This bit we're mainly focusing that on a bit last year, but I would say that they're a little bit more committed to the run. They've got Kerryon Johnson, they got DeAndre Swift in there. How that's going to make up the balance of their offense, I'm not quite sure. But I think Kerryon Johnson, I think my prop for the Lions would be Trey Flowers under 8.5 sacks. I'll give him an extra 1.5 leeway room, and Kerryon Johnson over 12 rushing touchdowns. Okay,
so how do we think this division's going to finish up? Think same again as last year, or do you think Detroit will be above Chicago?
Minnesota, Green Bay, Detroit, Chicago.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's 9-7 to win the division.
The classic NFC West. The classic NFC West winning total.
Yeah, it's just I just think the schedules are so hard for them. The team with the easiest schedule is Chicago out of everybody, and they've got Trubisky leading them. One thing that I did want to go over for both divisions is I had a look for the best MVP bets for each team. As is always the custom, it's always the quarterbacks that kind of lead this. The favourite is obviously Lamar at 11-2. I think it's going to be incredibly hard for him to repeat as MVP. I wouldn't. I just don't like the MVP. It's so,
there's so many variables that go into it in relation to injury and, how not just the injury to the player itself, but injuries to other players in the offense and what's needed. So I've never been a big fan of MVP bets, pre-season. Maybe around about 8 games, you could maybe identify 1 or 2 and think actually that's where it's going to be. But for this bunch of teams, I think if you were looking outside of Lamar Jackson, it'd be a frivolous punt.
Yeah, I mean, like the second favourite from this division is Rodgers at 25-1, which I think as we've kind of gone over here, we think he's going to be under 4,000 yards. So where does that? How can you be under 4,000?
Takes him out of it.
Yeah, and then after that, you're looking at Baker's 40-1, so is Big Ben. Stafford's 50-1, so is Kirk Cousins. Burrow is 80-1, and Trubisky is 125-1.
Well, full stop. To be MVP, your team has to get at least into the playoffs because it's voted on just after the conclusion of the regular season. Okay, so you're talking about the Ravens, Pittsburgh, and what we've gone, or Minnesota and Green Bay.
I don't think Green Bay make the playoffs because I don't think they'll be. I think if they finish second with that record, they're going to be under 9-7.
Okay. Well, if Kirk Cousins wins MVP, I'll be looking for the other horsemen of the apocalypse coming very soon.
No, I don't think he would win MVP in that offense. It would maybe be Cook. It would be based off that running game. It's just like I don't see. If we were saying the Packers finish second, they have to be. We're predicting 9-7 to win that division. So you're then looking at 8-8.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not going to be a running back either. Running back would have to run for 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns plus on the ground.
Yeah, but if you just go off last year, the second or the records that got into the playoffs and the wild card were Seattle at 11-5 and the Vikings last year at 10-6. So I don't actually see that coming. I think teams that have an easier schedule, like Tampa Bay, could sneak in as a wild card and have a better record.
Well, we'll get to Tampa when we discuss their division.
But that's just something that I would keep an eye on. I just don't think that's. I think whoever finishes second in this division doesn't make the playoffs. Well, thank you everyone for listening to this prediction pod. Next week we are going to be looking at the AFC West and the NFC West. So have fun. Hopefully you'll enjoy that, and we'll have our guest from NFL Scotland, Cameron Hobbs, with us. So a little bit of a change. Okay, well, with that, we will see you next week, and thanks very much for listening.